Hey baseball fans, I'm Matt Gross, aka the Rhode Island Rocky fan, and welcome to another episode of Purple Row Video. This will undoubtedly be the most somber episode yet after the events during yesterday's game, which, could have actually been even worse than it was, with, the three best players all having to leave. But for obvious reasons, could have lost Fowler or Gonzalez for a longer period of time as well, hopefully. Looks like they will avoid the disabled list, but the obvious blow and the real disheartening blow, especially for someone like me who is a huge Tulowitzki fan in addition to a Rockies fan, is the loss of Troy, because at this point, you just feel really, really, really bad about the entire situation, and that's probably understating it. And I think what's most frustrating to me is that everything that is plaguing Tulowitzki, everything that's keeping him from being either the best player in the game or undoubtedly one of the three or four best, is things that are out of his control with these injuries. And you have the fools out there, not on Purple Row, thankfully, but you have the fools out there who are just ripping him for being so injury prone, and that's what's so upsetting, because I know as a fan from everything, the people I've talked to who know him and have seen him, and just from watching from what you can see from where I'm sitting, that he has done everything humanly possible to stay on the field and be the most productive player he can possibly be for the Rockies, and his body just will not let him be that player. And that's just, as a fan of Tulowitzki and the Rockies, it's immensely frustrating, and I can only imagine what it's like for him to put in all that work in the offseason. Now, after a disastrous 2012, to come back, put all that work in the offseason, and get to where he was as a player during the first 2.5 months of this year. On pace for 10 wins above replacement, 40 home runs, 150 RBI, a season that, if the Rockies made the playoffs, was almost a shoo-in to be the MVP. He was good in the beginning of the game, middle of the game, the end of the game, different phases of the game, was continuing to play outstanding defense. He was that player that we all hoped he could be, and that he put in so much work to be, and then to have it all taken away again, this time from a rib injury, is just so frustrating. And again, the biggest thing that kills you is that that there's not much more that he can do. I feel like Troy Rennick's of the Denver Post has written extensively about this, that he has done everything he can do to stay on the field, and he's played it smart even this year. He's taking days off when he's had to, when little things have flared up, and just continued to be productive. He hasn't gone crazy in the base paths, and he's just been immensely valuable to this team so far. And his body just will not let him stay on the field. And the scariest thing is twofold. One, I know he's doing everything he possibly can to stay on the field, and two is that this is what his body is doing to him in his 20s, and this is probably an off-season topic that I don't feel like going into right now, partially because of what just happened and partially because it's scary to think about. But what is his body going to do to him when he gets to his 30s? Because it is just so frightening, and it's really, almost a baseball tragedy. Seeing the work this guy puts in, and just how good he is, and how much better he makes the Rockies when he's right, and then it keeps getting taken away from him. It's just so upsetting to see. And as a fan, I can only imagine what's going through his mind today. I just feel so sorry for him with everything that he's tried to do for this franchise, and now it seems to be coming apart again. But the one silver lining here today is that the rest of the division is injury plagued, and the rest of the division may not be very good. If the division is still going to take less than 90 wins to take to take the division. If it's going to be under 90, if that's the winning number, the Rockies are still alive. If you look at this, looking at the schedule, they're saying that Tulowitzki looks to be out for about 4 to 6 weeks. It's going to be at least 5. One, just because you have to have the bone heal, and you can't do any baseball activities because the swinging the bat, it takes so much torque. You can't do anything to your rib there to potentially injure it even more. So you got to wait for that to heal before you can observe baseball activity. But the other reason why is that the All-Star break is 4.5 weeks away. So if you look at where the All-Star break is, that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, in the middle of July, around July 15th or so, 5 weeks from today would be the Friday after the All-Star break, which is the first game back. So that's basically probably best case scenario where Tulowitzki would come back there. And that is actually the beginning of the easiest homestand of the season, where the Rockies play the Cubs, the Marlins, and the Brewers for 10 days. So I'm thinking somewhere from the conservative, that's just speculation on my part, but right now I guess you start to target somewhere in between the beginning and the end of that homestand for a return. And looking at the standings this morning, the Rockies are 2.5 games back from Arizona. It seems like they've been about 2.5 games back. That number has popped up probably for about 15 of the last 20 or 21 days. They've been sitting at that number, and hopefully it will continue to stay at 2.5. Is what you hope, because this is a very, very tricky stretch for Colorado here without Tulowitzki, particularly when they go on the road. That's where you're really going to miss him, because he's got a 975 OPS on the road this year. Good last year on the road, and you just wonder if the team is deep enough in those road games to hang on without him. But looking ahead now at the schedule, you have, even without Tulowitzki, this series against the Phillies is one you still should win. It's at home. You miss Cliff Lee. You get Tyler Chatwood, supposed to start game 2 of the series on Saturday, which is becoming a very, very, very big game for the Rockies, because they're going to need him to be right. They're just about out of mulligans right now on the injury front. They need, particularly he, De La Rosa, and Chacin, to pitch great almost every time they come through now to take some of these games. But this is number one. You want to win the series with the absence of Tulowitzki, the upcoming East Coast road trip, the way guys are banged up and the fact that they miss Lee, but also the Rockies do not take 2 out of 3 from the Phillies. That will mean they will have gone, if they, let's say, lose 2 out of 3, that means they will have gone 4-6 on this 10-game homestand, which is not what you're looking for the Rockies at home. So you really want to take 2 out of 3 just to get back to 5-5 on the homestand, because you know if this is what they're doing at home, it could get ugly on the road. But the other thing that's interesting here, and I think this is what's going to make or break the Rockies season here, because they're entering dangerous territory, is after the Phillies, you go on an East Coast road trip, you get Toronto, you get Washington, you get 2 games in Boston. It could be tricky. You hope to just hang on there. But after that is where they're going to enter what is probably going to be the stretch of the season that will define them, at least to this point. It'll be the most important stretch of games they have played probably more than 2 years. They play 16 consecutive games against the NL West after that road trip, up to the All-Star break. The last 16 games after the All-Star break, all against division opponents. They have a homestand with the Giants and the Dodgers, and then they have a difficult 10-game road trip to San Diego, Arizona, and Los Angeles to close out the first half. Now, what's interesting is that so far, the Rockies have actually been very, very good head-to-head against NL West teams. They are 15-6 in the 21 games they have played against the NL West so far. That sounds right. I think it's 16 over 500. I'll double check. I want to say they're 16 over 500. That stat may be wrong. Don't quote me on that, because I don't have it in front of me right now. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Let's see, they are 5-5 against the Giants, 4-6 against 9-11. That is 13, 21-15. That's the number. I knew it was 16 over 500. Sorry, but the Rockies are 21-15 against the NL West. So they're 6 games over 500 in the NL West, 3 games under when they face everybody else. That's the point I wanted to get at. Because, and one of the reasons why I think they have been successful is that the NL West lacks good starting pitching for the most part. Now, they might get shut down against Patrick Corbin. They've got shut down against Hyun-Jin Ryu. There's always a chance when you face the Giants that you'll run into a good Matt Cain or Madison Bumgarner start. But one of the things I think that has helped the Rockies in these head-to-head division games is that they have a lot of guys in this lineup who are good at killing bad pitching, but not very good when they face good pitching. And so that's kind of extended the depth of the lineup, and they score a ton of runs when they face these teams. They will need to continue to do that when they get in that 16-game stretch, because that's where they could really lose ground, or where they could hang on. If they hang on in those games, they will hang on in the division, obviously. So that stretch of games is interesting. If they can, they're 2.5 games out right now, and what I think you want, if you're a Rocky, which you originally hoped for, without Tulowitzki and with some of the other injuries going on, is get to the All-Star break within 5 games of the division lead. Because coming out of the All-Star break, with or without Tulowitzki, that homestand against the Cubs, Marlins, and Brewers, you shouldn't lose any ground there. So you figure that if the Rockies can get to the All-Star break at 5 games or less out of this division lead, they will still be within 5 games division lead by the time they get Tulowitzki back. And that's what you just desperately hope happens. And then the other, I guess, very, very slight positive here, and this is really looking, is that if I know anything about Troy Tulowitzki, is that when you knock him down, he gets more determined and even more motivated to get even better. If you look at what he's done when he's come back from all these injuries, remember he had missed a ton of time in 2008 with injuries, multiple stints on the DL. He came back and became an even better hitter in 2009 when he changed his stance, developed more power, took that next step as a player there. Then he had the broken wrist in 2010. Came back. The team was 9 games out of the division lead in late July that year. He came back at that incredible stretch where he had 14 home runs in 15 games, almost single-handedly dragged the team into the playoffs that year before he cooled off and the team fell apart in the end. And then, of course, after the 2012 disaster, he came back this year and really was just putting up a season for the ages at shortstop. He was on his way if this didn't happen. So each time you knock him down, he will get back to work. He will do everything humanly possible to help bring this team to prosperity. You just hope they're close enough to where when he comes back that they can make it an exciting August, September. But this was a devastating blow, and the team is now going through a stretch of waters where the ship could sink. So again, it's a depressing day. Hopefully it'll get better, and this story will have a happy ending.